Welcome back to WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal, where today we will be without graphics, and I will be chucking up gang signs for the entirety of this episode of WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. I'm Andrew J. Shasha, supervising editor of features here at the Western Journal, and I am joined today by Michael Austin on my left. He is a reporter here at the Western Journal, and Joey Chesker, who is an assignment editor here at the Western Journal. Today we've got a packed episode for you. We're going to be talking about the crisis in Israel. Lots of bombs going off over there this last couple of days. We're going to be talking a little bit more about GOP infighting. The ousting of Miss Liz Cheney in Congress occurred in terms of GOP leadership today. So Joey will be talking about that, and I'll be closing us out with a little bit on left-wing linguistic manipulation, talking about the decision by Merriam-Webster's dictionary to turn the definition of anti-vaxxer absolutely on its head today, but we're going to start again with the crisis in Israel.
Yeah, and I'm sure we've all seen the videos. There are just thousands of missiles being launched at Israel right now on behalf of Hamas. Thanks to them, I guess missiles are selling like hotcakes over there because they just keep on coming. And luckily, thanks to the Iron Dome and other, measures that Israel has, they've been able to stop most of these attacks. But nevertheless, Hamas has remained relentless. And, looking into why are these attacks? Why are they so prevalent and so intense at this moment in time specifically? Well, a little over a month ago, Biden reversed one of Trump's orders when he was president. Was he took away a lot of our funding to Palestine. Biden reinstated that, sending $75 million in economic aid to territories controlled by the Palestinian Authority and by Hamas. And he was warned. Senators Rubio, Cruz, a bunch of other Republicans, they all warned Biden, hey, this probably isn't a very good idea to send a bunch of money to territories controlled by terrorist organizations. Right. But, Biden sent it anyway because, fair is fair. And we have to, if we're going to help Israel, we have to also help the terrorists that are trying to, genocide all of the Jews in Israel, too. Yeah. So you can't have both. You can't pick a favorite there, I guess. And so, what a lot of people are saying now is, that aid has led to this increase of attacks. And not just the aid, but also, Biden has shown he's going to be much more lenient on Palestine, on Hamas. And so right now they are testing him. They're like, hey, we're going to give it everything we can. Stop us. I dare you. And it doesn't look like he's going to. And so, what do you think what do you think this says about what the Biden administration's approach to Israel is going to be? What do you think about it? And, for me personally, it reminds me a lot about kind of Obama's plan with the Iran nuclear deal. Yes. Mm-hmm. He basically just sent them a boatload of cash and he's like, yeah, well, once you send them cash, then they'll get all friendly and they'll be your allies. But really, they just redirected that to terrorism. Mm-hmm. Just like what is happening right now with Hamas. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, whether or not you can say that this money was directly used, I mean, of course not. Yeah, certainly you can't sit here and say the money that Joe Biden or Obama sent to X country was immediately diverted to terrorism. That's not the case. But money is money in the pockets of a normalized terrorist organization in a foreign government or entity, right? So at the end of the day, their purse is larger and they have more money to spend on these bombs. And it really it's a little bit more of the same when it comes to this Biden administration. We've seen time and again that in this first couple of months, they've been tested by all of our regional opponents, both in the Middle East, in East Asia. All these folks, they know, and we've said this on the right, the entirety of the campaign last year, that Joe Biden is a weakling. For all intents and purposes, this guy is a weakling. He is not willing to challenge these folks. I mean, it's the same as when Obama went on his global apology tour, is what Fox News used to call it. And it's the exact same thing. Brett Kershaw, one of our other reporters, has written a story pretty recently about the idea that, our constant conversation in Washington about critical race theory, about the United States being a broken country that has committed all these atrocities, it may feel nice to atone politically for these things, but at the end of the day, it's a showing of weakness on the world stage where another country says, look, you've admitted all these faults. You are a terrible country, and we should be able to handle our matters in our region the way we want. And
all these countries, they hide what they believe in and what they've done. They don't admit to it. So they stand on this false pedestal that we now do not get because we've decided we want to atone for all of these past mistakes. And we've just weakened our standing on the world stage and decided that we're just going to start throwing money to every humanitarian cause, no matter who it hurts on the other end.
And rhetorically, leaders in Palestine have used that to their advantage. And so has the CCP, in China. They have absolutely used that to their advantage, just basically telling us, well, straighten up your own house before you tell us we can't genocide an entire race of people. So
I think there's two large issues here. One of them is, why do we always send so much money to foreign countries? Why? Why are we still doing this? It leads to issues that we're in right now. Why? Every president has done it. I mean, even Trump still sent money overseas.
Yes.
Just stop sending money overseas, and there will probably be a lot less issues that we run into for America.
Of course. It's at the end of the day, I understand kind of the argument against non-interventionism.
Yeah.
I understand what you're talking. There are moral fights that we do need to get involved in, but at the end of the day, this money goes to things that we don't know what's happening generations
That's
down
the
the line.
issue.
This is, we talk about the Mujahideen. We fund the Mujahideen in Afghanistan against the Soviets. And it becomes Al-Qaeda, becomes the Taliban, becomes ISIS, and we're fighting these folks decades down the line. We have no idea what what American money does in foreign countries.
Yes.
All we know is that it sows instability. I totally understand wanting to support Israel, but at the end of the day, we need to be very particular about where money is going. And we wouldn't be giving all of this money directly to the Afghan government if the Taliban was the majority stakeholder in the Afghan government, because we know that they are not good faith actors. We know that about Hamas, and anyone who tells you otherwise is either patently just blind or completely disingenuous and looking to manipulate global conflict.
And one of the other larger narratives, and you kind of spoke to how, should we be even, aiding Israel as much as we do in terms of just sending over boatloads of cash. But, when it comes to Hamas and Palestine, you can just watch the news right now and you can see there's one side that is targeting civilians, that is trying to destroy the entire, all of Israel. And then there's another side that is specifically targeting, military personnel and the missile, where the missiles are coming from and all of that. Do you think narratively, Hamas and Palestine, do you think they have a grip over the American media and therefore the American people? Or do you think, enough people are aware of what is actually going on over there?
I think the American media has convinced the left, and the left has convinced the left that the attacks on Israel are completely justified. I mean, I saw yesterday Rashida Tlaib was speaking at a radical rally in Washington, D.C., basically shouting for the destruction and death of Israel. And she gets away with it. Yeah. And she's convinced all her followers that it's fine. So I do think, I probably think the majority of Americans are on the side of Israel in this. I really do. But there is no doubt that the left has convinced a significant number of people that the attacks on Israel are fine and that they should happen and that Israel should be destroyed.
Yeah, this organization, this false state, quite honestly, has played the American media like a fiddle. There's a quote that goes around every 3 to 6 months when this conflict kind of is exacerbated once again, that, if Hamas laid down its weapons, there would be peace and there would be civility. If Israel laid down its weapons, Israel would be wiped off the face of the earth.
Yes, exactly.
And so when you live under this paradigm, under this kind of false equivalency, there's no way to actually operate fairly. And the fact that the American media has decided that, the Palestinians are a harmed people group, they're, another one of these groups that the left has decided, I want to give money to these folks, I want to say that they have been aggrieved for since the beginning of time and therefore must be treated differently. And when you play that game, you enable anything on that side to be done in pursuit of justice. And those terms matter. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but the way we frame these discussions matters tremendously. Yeah,
and controlling the narrative, controlling what people are saying, that's that's a tactic being used by the left and the media in a number of ways, not just with Palestine, but also with certain definitions and words.
And we will be getting to that. But first, I know Joey's got something to bring to the table here.
I wasn't sure which one we were transitioning to, so I thought I had a 50-50 chance of getting it right.
It's okay.
And all right, you're fine.
It was a great segment. That wasn't coming up.
It was a really good setup. It was very good. So today, Liz Cheney was voted out of GOP leadership in the House. She was with the third highest ranking member. Yeah. And I don't want to sound like I'm a big fan of Liz Cheney. I mean, she's a warmonger. She's as establishment as it gets. Her dad, I mean,
you don't even need to speak on it. We all know.
Her dad. So no one is a fan of her. But when you look at her voting record, she voted with Trump 98% of the time in the House. Really good voting record. And now they want to replace her with Elise Stefanik. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I'm sorry if that's not how it's pronounced. Who has a absolutely horrific voting record. And it's this frustrating thing that conservatives have had a problem with since Trump took office. It's like if you wear the MAGA hat and you say you support Trump, it doesn't matter what your actual principles or voting record are because you support Trump. And so some of the things that she has voted for and against, one of them, she's voted for pro-amnesty bills. She voted against funding for the wall. She voted for the Paris Climate Agreement. She voted for preserving Obamacare. She is anti-drilling. She voted for the Equity Act before the most recent version in the House. She voted against, what's this one? She voted against a rule that would prevent internet providers from sharing data on customers' activities. So she is anti many conservative principles and important things to the conservative movement right now. But everyone is praising her that she needs to be the next person in GOP leadership in the House, when it seems like to me we're replacing Liz Cheney, who is total establishment, but she's conservative, with a rhino that is, she's voted with Democrats almost as often as she's voted with Republicans. And this woman is going to be the third highest ranking member in the GOP in the House. That's alarming to me. And I did see today, I think Chip Roy from Texas is going to challenge her for that position. And he's part of the House Freedom Caucus. So why do you guys think conservatives, Republicans are jumping on board with someone who has such a bad voting record?
Well, I think sometimes we care way too much about appearances, way too much about appearing, politically neutral, winning people on both sides.
Yeah.
When really, we should be sticking to our guns and we should be sticking to our values. You saw that with, when Trump first came in, there was so much of the establishment was against him. And, eventually they slowly started to fade away a little bit. And now I think a lot of those people are going to be wanting to get back in, and we need to make sure that that doesn't happen.
I'm actually gonna volley against both of you guys on this one. I brought this last week a little bit when this had first there was a little bit of whispering that Elise Stefanik was going to be for lack of a better word, coronated as kind of the follow-up for Cheney. I would agree with you. I think that, Cheney, at the end of the day, her voting record, pretty solid.
Yeah.
I think very, very lowly of her and her family.
Totally.
I don't like their policy. I don't, particularly their foreign vision for the United States.
No.
But I think that she was removed for all the wrong reasons. I think that the idea that she stood up, I think she says it a little too much about January 6th. I think people are putting far too much weight on January 6th. But the fact that she was removed for being opposite the president on that issue is deeply problematic to me. However, I actually, even, and this is going to kind of be the completely bitter partisan part of me speaking. Optically, I think this is a great decision. I think that there is a diversity of thought in the Republican Party, or there should be, and there has been for a very long time, that doesn't exist across the aisle, or hasn't until this kind of Rashida Tlaib, even more radical left developed. that, the Republicans, there is a diversity of thought. We want different ideas. There is a difference between a New York Republican and an Arizona Republican. And that's, we saw this with Goldwater and Rockefeller in the 60s, and we see it recur throughout the decades. And I think that it does matter that these New York conservatives or these New York Republicans, maybe a little bit rhino-y. I worked on Charlie Baker's campaign in college. Definitely a rhino by my, thoughts on conservatism. And I'm a deeply conservative individual. But I think that there's a place for those folks because at the end of the day, we need to be winning people based on states. At the end of the day, the popular vote, doesn't matter. The states matter. And so I think values matter more than the states. But if you stick so closely to a kind of monolithic view of the party and you end up isolating states and just washing them off the map for blue, it's not helping anyone. So I am interested to see what she might do.
Yeah.
She clearly, to me, I think the winning message, this was Trump's message in 2016, but not so much in 2020, was his message of America first.
Yes.
And I think conservatives need to focus on putting America first candidates because that's what wins. We have seen that that's the message that wins, not this extreme focus on, it's socialism is so terrible and all this stuff. It's on America first. It's
boring.
And Stefanik, she feels like that. Like we're going to move into the rhino-y, like Mitt Romney, John McCain, who was Jeff Flake from Arizona before. It feels like that's the direction that we're going. And it feels like every time we put people like that in power, we lose. And so why are we putting someone who is against America first and against the conservative movement just solely for optics? I don't agree with sacrificing principles just because it looks good.
I totally understand where you're coming from on that, and I would never say wash the principles for optics or for political gain.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, we are talking about a woman who was an absolute dog in the first impeachment proceedings. She was a bulldog. She was a fighter for the president in that first impeachment trial. At the end of the day, I think that her principled differences, though I might disagree with her on policy, they're good for her state and for the Republicans in her state. And at the end of the day, when it comes to marching in lockstep against the folks across the aisle, she does seem to fall in line when it comes to we need to defeat the left, not be infighting among ourselves. And I think that is important. Despite her difference of ideals, we would differ greatly. We would not have a fun conversation.
Yeah, right.
I think that she's a fighter for the party as a whole, and I think that does matter.
And I think, when we're talking about, and I think you totally might be right, Andrew, that this is the strategy to win popular vote, to win, just win more states. But, when you talk about diversity of thought, there are different kinds of diversity of thought that we should be looking for. And if your diversity of thought lines you up with the Democratic Party a lot, I don't necessarily think that is great. If we bring in more, hardline libertarians, more, I don't know, there's other groups that we could bring in more of that would have, a wide range of different viewpoints that wouldn't necessarily give the Democrats advantages politically in different ways. So, when we, it's kind of like the difference between diversity and cultural pluralism. We still want to be all aiming for the same thing. And Stefanik, she is a passionate supporter of the party. But, when those votes start to go for things that we really don't agree with, that really don't line up with our values, if we start getting more and more of those people in our party, I don't think that helps us whatsoever. I think that hurts us a lot.
Yeah, because it sends a message like, oh, you can be against 50% of the things Republicans vote for, and we'll still put you in a leadership position.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And I think it looks so bad if you have the third highest ranking GOP member saying, oh yeah, I'll vote with the left on amnesty. She voted against the tax cuts. She voted against making the tax cuts permanent. How will it look to have a high ranking Republican vote for new tax cuts or vote for Biden's dreams of his crazy infrastructure bill and stuff like that? That will be a really bad look. And I can't think of an instance where nationally having someone moderate be the nominee for president. I look at Mitt Romney in 2012. We got utterly destroyed. The dude was a moderate rhino, crappy candidate. And it feels like putting people like that in power, running them, actually hurts us instead of sending principled, strong candidates with a good message. I just think it's a bad look.
And before you respond, Andrew, just to kind of bolster my point just a little bit more, the other thing is, like, I totally agree that, like, a diversity of thought is really good.
Yeah.
It's good for a group, any sort of group.
I agree.
A political party, definitely. But when you have one side that starts to get a little more, diverse in terms of opinion, and you got the other side that is completely uniform, or at least as close as they've ever been, they're going to be strong together, and we're going to be weakened when we start to pull apart a little bit.
Completely understand that conversation because I've brought the opposite side of the coin. I'm going to steal the last word here before we move on. Totally going to.
I just want to say, if you give the left an inch, they'll take a mile.
Will.
So if she votes with them once, I mean, they'll run with it. So that's my last comment.
I would absolutely agree with you. I look forward to seeing her voting record under this Congress.
Yes.
I want to see.
Yep.
I would never put her up as a presidential candidate.
Right.
I think, however, in congressional leadership, she may be an asset. I'd like to see where she votes in this coming Congress.
Sure.
And if you're right, I'll come forward on the show and I'll say Joey and Mike were absolutely right about Elise Stefanik. I'm more than happy to sell out a couple politicians from time to time. You brought up a good point here, Michael, about the left's lockstep movement on just about everything, down to the point where they are just stealing institutions away to start marching in lockstep with the Democratic Party. So we have seen throughout this pandemic that the left has manipulated terms and they have manipulated authority to just beat down dissent when it comes to COVID. And now, I'm someone who, I believe the virus is real. I can't believe we have to say that. The virus is real. There has been a major pandemic. I think the vaccine is generally a good thing.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, there is dissent on our side of the party with regard to that. On the left, however, they have decided that they're just going to beat down anyone who disagrees in the slightest.
Yeah.
So we saw it this morning that Merriam-Webster's dictionary, who has been just taking liberties all over the place this last year, changing the term racism to mean a different thing, changing all these terms.
Court packing.
Court packing got changed because, Biden wants to pack the court. And so we're going to start manipulating language to mean whatever the left wants operationally. And so today we saw, and we're going to put these tweets up on the screen here for you guys in a minute. We saw a couple of tweets about a major change to anti-vaxxer. It's going to be that is a noun definition of anti-vaxxer, a person who opposes vaccination. I think we would all agree on that part of the definition.
Yep.
Yeah.
Added today, or laws that mandate vaccination. So we had a couple people come out and talk about that. We first had, there's a conservative Christian rapper, I believe, Zuby Music, who wrote on Twitter, the Merriam-Webster dictionary has changed their definition of anti-vaxxer to include, quote, people who oppose laws that mandate vaccination. Welcome to 1984. This is the Ministry of Truth. YAF, Young Americans for Liberty, who we've worked with in the past. We've interviewed some of their folks. They do some great work as well. They threw up a tweet and they said, the Merriam-Webster dictionary updated its definition, blah, blah, blah. When the left controls the language, they control the narrative. So this, and these guys will know because they sit next to me. We can pull those tweets down. These guys sit next to me in the office, and I was absolutely fuming over this definition change this morning because I have been someone who throughout this pandemic has been overwhelmingly pro-vax. I think that the conspiracies about the vaccine are completely overblown. I think worries about vaccination and toxins in vaccines completely overblown. I do not buy the, it causes autism, it causes all of these late stage problems in children. I don't believe any of that. I am overwhelmingly pro-vax. But I have a staunch belief that the government should not be forcing anyone to inject themselves with any sort of serum, particularly with what we know the medical community has done in the past. We talk about the Tuskegee experiments pretty frequently behind the scenes here.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And we have the liberty in this country to make our own decisions. So when someone like me who quite frankly, is pretty kind of blows off and jokes about the anti-vax movement, is then just roped in and defined into the anti-vax movement because I am so bold as to not want the government to force everyone to get vaccinated. I'm a conservative who believes that it's a social responsibility for folks to contribute to herd immunity. I think it's a good thing. I grew up in a home with my grandparents. These are, baby boomers, greatest generation folks. They believed that it was conservative to want to develop a herd immunity. And so I believe that. I truly believe that. To then make me an anti-vaxxer because I don't think the government should force it is baffling. So what I want to ask you guys today is, first of all, quite simply, thoughts on the definition itself. Not what it does, not implications politically. What do we think? Does this definition make sense? Is this a natural progression of a word?
No, it does not make sense. I don't know what else to say about it. No, it doesn't make sense. Now, personally, I'm not going to get the vaccine. I don't want to get it. I think if you want to get it, you're welcome to. I don't think the government should mandate it. I don't think vaccine passports should be a thing, anything like that. I think it's all about what you feel comfortable with, what you feel your responsibility is. And that doesn't make you an anti-vaxxer. No. You're not specifically against the vaccine. I'm saying anti-vaxxer means you have some personal feeling against the vaccine. Almost like you're scared of it or something. Like you just...
You don't get your flu shot. You don't get the polio vaccine.
It's not. It doesn't make sense to lump people in because it's something like, I don't know, like over 50% of Americans who are against mandating the COVID vaccine, which would mean that 50-some% of Americans are anti-vaxxers, which is just not true. And it's so alarming that they're doing this. The definition is stupid. I completely disagree with it. It's dumb.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And, when we think of anti-vaxxers, what I think of is people who believe conspiracy theories about the effects that vaccinations have. That vaccines cause autism in young children. We know that's not a fact. We know that, the reason that specific myth came out was because, around the time that autism would develop in kids is around the age that they would be receiving vaccines. So it was just, coincidental. And, if you have any concerns about the current vaccine, John Hopkins has put out a lot of good research about a lot of the myths that are being put out about it. But even after all of that, if you don't want to take it, I don't think you should be called an anti-vaxxer.
Right.
Like, that is your choice. And you could just be uncomfortable with it. That's completely fine. And then, when it comes to having the government mandate, this is just the left where it stands right now. They're getting into very communist Maoist territory where they want to use language to control people. They want to use language to label people as enemies, to make them untouchable so that the rest of society can point at them and go, okay, those are the bad guys. And this is just another example of that. They're redefining of racism, of court packing, of they are constantly redefining and creating new words. Anti-racist is a really, really good example. If you don't agree with everything we think we should do about racism, you're not anti-racist and you're a racist. So, they're just trying to control language and they're trying to control people and they're trying to make all of us look evil when, the wide majority, the majority of people who are anti-vaxxers now are probably people that would be fine getting the vaccine. It's ridiculous.
It is exactly what you're talking about. What scares me so much about this, and I want to get you in on this, Joey, is it is so dangerous when we start manipulating language with the hopes of kind of alienating and making folks look stupid or evil. To me, I absolutely agree with you, Michael. I would even expand the anti-vaxxers. I think there are plenty of well-intentioned folks who are, there are kind of Hollywood leftists. We've seen anti-vax kind of go through that community. There's some crunchy naturalist hippies in Hollywood that think we need to go back to the natural way. And so that's them. Yeah. There is an element of the Christian right that thinks that it is, that it opposes their biblical beliefs. And people are allowed to have those beliefs. Even if you think that they are ridiculous, people are allowed to have those beliefs. And to force them to get an inoculation is deeply dangerous. And even worse is to be so disingenuous with your language as to say that anyone who is a little bit worried about how fast it's been produced, anyone who is worried about the government, again, forcing an injection into your arm at gunpoint, essentially, is, in that camp and as ridiculous as malicious as evil as those folks. Who I would disagree with them being malicious or evil or stupid. Some of them, most of them. But to then lump everyone else in is a dangerous play to make enemies in day-to-day social life. Do you have any thoughts on that, Joey?
I think this is an area that conservatives have utterly failed at addressing.
Yeah.
We have let the left take over all of the institutions in the United States, all of the cultural institutions. Now we've let them take language from us.
Yeah.
They now have language and have weaponized it against us, and we just sit and we try to defend ourselves. We are never on the offense with the left. We always find ourselves defending ourselves against the left. And this is just the latest example of it. They are crushing us because they can change language and create a definition, then weaponize that, and then they can label 50% of the population as anti-vaxxers. Oh, they've changed the definition of racism. Now 50% of the population is racist. Like, this is a huge problem in America. And I'm not sure what we do, but the right has done nothing to address it. We've done nothing. They're destroying us.
And this
moves like this.
And this speaks to a much larger conversation. But the reason that they have so much of a stranglehold over us in those areas is because they control the culture. And culture, politics is downstream of culture, all that stuff. And George Upper, our editor in chief, likes to say that culture is downstream of religion. And the left kind of controls the most popular religion in the U.S. right now, probably in the world, which is social justice. So until we start to break down those cultural strangleholds they have, they're going to be able to just make up words like whatever they want to do. So,
and I think that's one thing the right needs to go after. We have focused so long on talking about things like tax cuts and socialism and all that stuff, and those issues are important, but we're also letting the left destroy us culturally and doing nothing about it. And instead, we're talking about how important tax cuts and how bad socialism is. That's why the left keeps winning and taking these institutions, because we have let them. Because our priorities are messed up.
They are playing a game of football, and we are in the middle of the field playing checkers. While they kick us in the shins on the way by. If you want to fight back against those things, if you want to step into the culture war, if you want to help us out here at the Western Journal, we're just about out of time here. But if you want to fight back against that, the media manipulation that we talked about at the turn of the hour, if you want to get involved when it comes to the linguistic manipulation, fighting back against those things, obviously we're going to say support the Western Journal, support WJ Live. We're going to say here at WJ Live, you can catch us live every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. I don't know how I have started to develop the George problem of not knowing these times, but it is Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. You can catch us live. If you want to do that, make sure that if you're watching us on YouTube, you go and you hit that red subscribe button. Make sure that once you've done that, you hit the bell. That bell that pops up next to the subscribe button is going to make sure that you not only are kind of in our list, but that you are notified every time we go live, that you never miss an episode, that big tech never gets in the way of us getting to you and you getting to us. If you're watching us anywhere else, or you want to watch us anywhere else, you want to take us in the car with your family, you want to take us on vacation, you want to take us on your daily run, you can find us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you get your audio content. And lastly, if you want to support the Western Journal, you want to support the journalism we do here, a lot of the stuff we talk about at this table is based on articles that we've run throughout the day, issues we've come across in the newsroom. If you want to look inside that, you can go to westernjournal.com/join, and you can join one of our several subscription tiers. You can get involved. You can contribute a little bit. All that money is going to go to our journalism. It's not filling any pockets here. It's going to the work, to the culture war that we're fighting. It's going to us educating you and educating your friends and your family. So if you want to get involved in that, you can follow any of those steps. It appears we got our graphics back, so the WJ Live gang sign special has officially been ended. But thank you for watching WJ Live, and you'll catch us back here on Friday.
Bye, guys.